Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is Holly and I am super excited to continue on with our Disney 101 question and answer series. I've done several other videos already. We've talked about toddlers in Disney, we've talked about Disney on a budget, we've talked about Disney splurges, and we have talked about the questions of how you plan a Disney trip and why we go to Disney. So if you have not seen those videos in the series, I will try to link those below and I would love for you to go back and catch up. Now, I have kind of been avoiding the proverbial elephant in the room when it comes to Disney World because this is summer 2020 and we are in the middle of a global pandemic, which is COVID-19, and Florida has certainly been in the hot seat with some numbers as of this recording topping over 15,000 cases in a single day, which is huge, huge numbers. It puts it fourth in the world. If Florida was its own country, it would come in behind the US, behind Brazil, behind India, and then little old Florida would be in fourth place. So it's pretty terrible. I've got a lot of mixed emotions about it. Disney World just opened the theme parks this past weekend and are opening 2 more theme parks coming up in the next couple of days. So to say that they are in the thick of it is to put it lightly. So I have decided to go ahead and just tackle this subject head on and to give you my opinion and my perspective. Now, of course, these are just my opinions and my perspective. I am not a medical doctor. I am not any type of authority. I'm just a mom with 2 young kids who loves to go to Disney and who does currently have some trips coming up this fall. But let's just jump in. Question number 1. Is it safe? There is inherent risk in anything that we do out and about, whether it's grocery shopping or going to the park or organizing a play date to getting gas at a gas station. There is just inherent risk right now in being out of our own home, and there's really no way to ignore that fact. We are in a riskier situation right now in 2020 than we were last year at the same time in 2019. So there is inherent risk built up in our just in our daily life that we didn't used to have to consider or used to have to deal with. The first is it legal to do so, in the sense like, is the state still open? I think a lot of folks have been maybe concerned or starting to wonder if the governor of Florida will do another kind of shutdown of the state. And if that is not in place, are there any travel restrictions from your state to these high-risk areas? I know here in the last couple days, I've heard rumors of, as the schools start to reopen in certain areas, that they may be requiring a 14-day quarantine for those folks coming back from high-risk areas, Florida being one of those. So the question, is it safe, would also have to be asked with, can I go? Will my state allow me to travel? Will Florida allow me to travel there? And then once I'm there, will I be willing to wholeheartedly and fully comply with all the measures in place that Walt Disney World, as a privately owned business, has put in place to keep its guests and its cast members safe? That is, as of this filming, it is a full face mask, it is temperature screenings, it is the 6-foot, social distancing, also the hand washing, and, are you willing to comply with all that? When we think about, is it safe for us to go, we think about these things. First of all, we live in West Virginia, and right now there is no restrictions to travel to Florida or for us to return home from Florida. So that's something we've considered. We are absolutely 100% willing and wholeheartedly intend to comply with all the restrictions put in place, wearing our masks, having our children wear the mask, keeping our distance from other folks, and submitting to temperature checks and things of that nature. I would argue that because of these measures that Disney has put in place, that you could potentially be safer there than just going to your own supermarket where they're not requiring face masks, or even in your local town where no one is taking temperatures when people are out and about. So I know from my trust in the Disney Corporation that they are first a business that does not want any bad publicity, nor do they want some type of bad public perception of them. So I think they're doing all they can to mitigate the risk. And so in that sense, I do feel like actually being in Disney World will be safer than in my own hometown at this point, because there are no laws at this time, for masks or for temperature checks. So that's kind of our messy answer. Is it safe? And I would say it's not any less safe than any place else except for the state of Florida. So how you travel to Florida will be an important determination for the amount of risk you're exposing yourself to, which will lead us to our second COVID-19 question. So question number 2, how you get there really matters to us. So our second, kind of bullet point under the COVID-19 discussion we're having today is travel, and how do you plan to get to Florida? Because there are certainly some riskier ways, namely air travel right now. So a couple of weeks back, the Orlando airport reported that almost half of its employees had tested positive for COVID-19. And because of the recycled air and the long duration of most flights, in which the air is continually kind of just recirculated and reused, we personally would not be traveling to Disney World by air. So what is our situation? Well, we are along the eastern seaboard. We are in West Virginia. We are about 12 to 13 hours away from Orlando, depending on traffic and road conditions. So we have intended for the next couple of trips, should they happen, we have intended to drive down. Now this summer I did do a road trip with my kiddos, just me and my kiddos, as my husband still had to work. And it is possible, I can attest, to do so safely, to travel by car, do the old-fashioned American road trip and do it safely and keep your distance, and to kind of avoid any additional risk of being out and about. Some of the tips that I would give you would be to use rest stops and avoid restaurants of any kind. So we used rest stops both for the bathroom facilities as well as the picnic space. And I bought a huge, fitted sheet to slip over the concrete picnic benches. And then I brought a cooler full of a picnic lunch and snacks. My kids are little, 4 and 2 at the time of that road trip. So we did pull-ups, and then I brought a little kid potty for the trunk, and if they really had to go and I wasn't close to anywhere convenient, I would stop and let them use that. So they did not go into any public spaces whatsoever. We paid at the pump, so I didn't need to go into any gas station. So I really was able to get in and out and get my travel done, and it was a 9.5 hour, 10-hour drive. So it's going to be pretty comparable for how it will be for us to travel down to Walt Disney World. So in my opinion, it's not safe right now to fly. It's a risk I would not be taking right now. So if you can get yourself to Walt Disney World and not be flying, then maybe it's something you could still consider. But for us, that would be too great of a risk right now in the middle of the summer of 2020. So the question is, are you comfortable wearing a mask? So that is a loaded question right now. It should not be a loaded question, but it has become such a political issue right now that it's really kind of heartbreaking. But Disney, as I said earlier, is a private business, and they can set the rules however they deem necessary and beneficial, and they have made masks a requirement for everyone from the age of 2 and up. So our 2-year-old and our 4-year-old will both have to wear masks. You cannot wear at this time the gator style, which is kind of like a scarf that comes up. You have to have the ones that loop over your ears, and they are not provided for you, though they are plentifully available to purchase. So you'll need to bring your own and be prepared to wear it anytime you are out and about anywhere on the Disney property. The only exceptions to the mask policy are when you are sitting down and eating. So when you're actually in a restaurant actively eating and drinking, otherwise the mask should be on. And then when you are in the pool, again, otherwise if you're sunbathing, in theory, the mask should be on. And what I've seen of opening week procedures is that this has not only been carefully monitored by Disney cast members, but also been very, very, very wonderfully adhered to by all the guests coming into the park. So a huge kudos. I think it does create you know, this kind of feeling of camaraderie, that we're all doing it together, that everyone's there despite the inconvenience and despite the, you know, just like the uncomfortableness of a mask, still willing to submit to the rules in order to have a good time and to travel with their family. So if that's your attitude going into, you know, your vacation, in the sense that maybe it's not going to be easy, maybe it's not going to be comfortable, but I and my family will, you know, wholeheartedly comply with the mask policy, and we'll do our part to keep ourselves and those around us safe, then I would say, you know, that's another green light to continue on your trip. The fourth question is a delicate one because everyone's going to have mixed opinions about this, but I want to talk to you about restaurants for a little bit. How do you plan to eat when you're in Disney World? And the reason why this is important is because a lot of the cases, the surging cases, have been tied back to beaches, bars, and restaurants. And restaurants is the one that I just don't hear people talking about enough at Disney World. Because as I've mentioned, you have to wear a mask in every public space, indoors and outdoors at Disney World, except when you're sitting down and eating. So when you come into a restaurant, at that point you're able to take off the mask and breathe the recycled, air-conditioned air with all the other patrons that are also in there enjoying their lunch or their dinner. So from a science standpoint, this presents a bit of a problem for me because the masks help mitigate some of the risk of inhaling, you know, the virus or transmitting the virus. But that risk doesn't go away when you sit down to eat. It's not like, you know, the COVID-19 virus is like, oh, they're having a couple of French fries, I'm not gonna sneak in there. So for me and my family, we are willing to eat more quick service meals. And why is that, you know, an issue? Well, it means that we will probably be avoiding sit-down restaurants indoors. So if we do any sit-down restaurants, we will look for places with patio seating, and we will try to stay outdoors where there's great ventilation and plenty of fresh air circulating. We will, unfortunately, because it's going to be in September, we will try to avoid air conditioning, you know, without our masks on. We still want to enjoy great food. We still want to have a really great experience relaxing and visiting and chatting, but we will try to do it in an outdoor area. Quick service locations are great for that because most of them are already outdoors and have open air seating. Obviously, we'll try to find a place with a good breeze and a big fan to kind of help keep us cool, but we will probably try to be avoiding any indoor, you know, confined space restaurants, which is going to be a bummer because that's part of our, you know, part of what we really enjoy is going in and having a good meal and sitting and talking and taking our time. But for right now, it is what it is, and we will probably be hustling to get our food, you know, eaten and our masks back on as quickly as possible. Question number 4 is where will you eat and how will you eat? And that's something you should consider if the question, you know, your ultimate question you're trying to answer is it a good time for me to go to Walt Disney World? The 5th question is, are you willing to isolate? So should these states move forward with their isolation, you know, policies after folks have traveled, you know, whether it's for the school district or just for your state, after you travel, are they enforcing any type of isolation? And if they aren't enforcing it, should you consider doing it just to be cautious? That's something you should think about. Are you willing to isolate, whether it's required by your state or not, when you travel to a high-risk area and then return home? If your job cannot afford you to stay home for 2 weeks after you travel to Disney World, unfortunately that should be a yellow light, if not an automatic red light for you. If your child's school also requires a 2-week isolation before they return to the classroom after traveling to a high-risk area, again, unfortunately that should be a yellow light or an automatic red light because a lot of folks would not feel comfortable with their kiddo missing that much school. So these are the really tough questions that we have to consider. I think we all want to travel to Disney World. We all want to be able to justify our trips and have a blast with our family and friends, and that certainly is our situation. We really want to travel and go and visit, but as we work through this list of, you know, the top 5 questions, you know, we really do have to kind of consider, are we getting some yellow lights? Are we running into some red lights? Or are all the questions we've talked about, are we getting green lights in all of them? So for us right now, it's a bit of a mixed bag. We mostly have green lights. We're willing to accept the inherent risk. We're willing to do all we can to keep ourselves safe. We're certainly willing to travel there as safely as possible and to accept the masks. We're willing to eat, you know, in restaurants and areas that would kind of, again, mitigate some of that risk. And then we are willing to isolate. My husband works from home full-time anyway, and the kids and I, depending on what the school district does, will have to make our decision based upon their new policies. Right now, there are no travel restrictions and no quarantining recommended for the school year. So we're kind of in a wait and see situation, and our trip is coming up. We are under 60 days away. So I will keep you posted on what happens, but I did want to have this very difficult, very kind of stressful conversation about Disney and COVID-19, and I wanted to run through this checklist with you. And so I would really love your feedback. Let me know which questions you think are the most important to consider. Let me know if you're still planning a trip and what, you know, kind of red light, green light, you know, questions are you considering and have you worked through yourself, because that's interesting to me. So thanks for joining me in the Disney 101. I'm sorry this was such a Debbie Downer of a post. I think it's really necessary to talk about these things. We certainly don't want to be, you know, sticking our heads in the sand and acting like it's not happening. And I want to be well informed. I want you to be well informed. I want us to make decisions based on facts and science and good reason, and not just on emotion, because I can certainly be driven by my emotion a lot, and Disney is such a special place to me. I would probably be eager to rush in without considering all the facts. So be sure to subscribe to my channel, and that way you can be notified when the next video goes live. So thanks for following along, and we will talk very soon.